What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. I'm your host RT, and today we're going to be talking about the Atari 2600. Now, I already know there's tons of videos out there talking about the Atari, the specs on it, when it came out, and all this other stuff. But today we're not going to just only talk about that. We're going to make it more in-depth and more personalized with what it was like back in the 70s to own an Atari, and what it was like to actually hook it up, the experience I had with it. And at the end of the video, we're gonna have one tip that a lot of people don't talk about a lot, but it actually was a big deal back in the day. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So let's go ahead and paint that picture of what it was like back in the 70s and 80s to have an Atari 2600. Okay, so you remember this guy? Everybody and their mama in the 70s had it. Everybody and their mama. It was a thing. I don't even know what you call them. They were merman tables. Okay, and they were made of solid wood. And the beautiful things, these things were virtually indestructible. And they all had that wood smell. If you know, you know, back in the day. And you probably had an ugly lamp like this that went with it. Okay. And inside, you hoped and prayed that it was an Atari. So you open it up, you look, and inside is an Atari. Okay. So a lot of people had magazines, or they had that old tin cookie thing where they ate those nasty cookies in that blue tin, and they saved the tin and they put shit in it. They just put like paper clips and all kind of crazy stuff. But generally, this is what you were looking for, an Atari. Okay, so we'll take a look. This Atari's put away, and that's how most of them were back in the day. We just left the game in there, left the joystick plugged in because we were going to take it back out. But there is an upside. You know, we figure we didn't pay for it. We're just going to throw it in there. However, this one's wrapped, okay? So the difference being there is that the person that wrapped this thing, they're probably going to college. They're not as unorganized. At least they cared enough to wrap it. Most people just throw it in there. But since they wrapped it, probably in the future now, they probably went to college. And the people who just threw it in there with nothing were probably just workers at the mill, if you were in the Midwest at the time. That's probably how that played out. But this is what it was generally in, something like this. Okay guys, so these are Ataris I got. I got two of them, okay? So we'll take a look at both of them real fast. And this one right here is got 6 switches. Is the major difference between the two. And this one's got 4. These two switches right here in the middle, okay? Your left player, your skill left player, skill right player. That's the same buttons that's on the back here. And they're just labeled, it won't zoom for me, but A and B, expert, and novice. And you got that. So basically the only difference really is these two switches here are up here, okay? That's the only difference. Now, if you look right here, it says telegames. Down here, it says video arcade, okay? Now, you're probably like, well, RT, you said it was an Atari. It is an Atari, but you gotta think of it like this. Back in the day, if you got your Atari from like Sears, you got this version, telegames, okay? That was their line of Atari, if that makes any sense. But it's the same equipment inside, same hardware. If you got the ones from like Toys R Us or something like that, then you got the ones that say Atari on it. Okay, the one I had as a kid had Atari. This is a telegames, but it's the same one. And some of the games were the same to note. Like, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that later when we look at the games. These are the joysticks, okay? And they were pretty simple. They were 8-way. They had one button on it, and that was it. Pretty basic. Oh, didn't mean to break it. Might have broke it. But if you had an Atari, if you get one used, expect to find teeth marks sometimes up here, because back in the day, I don't know why we did that. People just bit on these things. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know why, but they might have bite marks on them. These right here are the paddles, and these were made. It was a paddle, and it had a splitter. So the plug had 2 wires that came from it, and what it was for playing games that need quick movements, like Breakout, Warlords, things like that. Certain games required these. You couldn't play them with the standard controllers. Another part was your power adapter. Okay, it usually has an Atari logo on the back. It plugs in, and you get the console. So that was pretty much everything with the Atari. Now for the setup. Okay, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I mean, we can do this part now. I'm going to be using this Atari right here. Just to note the difference, when you hear somebody say 6-year switch, or you know, something like that, they're talking about this one having the 6 switches on the top. They have one like this, they'll usually say a 4 switch or 4 shooter or something like that. That's what they'll call it, you know, but usually it's called a 6 switch or something like that. they're referring to the ones with the 6 switches on it. All right. So basically, we'll take this joystick here, the one that's not wrapped, the one that I almost broke, and all it does is a plug on the back. Okay, it looks like that. It can only go in one way. Okay, and on the back right here, you'll see it. It's got plugs. You plug it in the back like so. Okay, once it's plugged in, whenever you hook the adapter up, I highly recommend, because this thing back in the day, these things gave off a lot of voltage. So make sure that you plug it in first. It only goes one way. Okay, you plug it in. Make sure you plug it in first before you turn on the power. Next, you have this connector here. Now I have an adapter on mine, and this goes to the TV. All right. So this adapter is basically, if you take it off, you'll see the end of the Atari. This is what carries your signal, your video, and your audio. It looks like a component or a composite cable, but it is not. Okay. And what I mean by that is it's an RF cable. It carries an RF signal. So if we go to the TV and you look here, most people that's modern, they don't know about it, they're going to try to plug it in here, and it's not going to work. This is not a composite or a component signal. All right. It needs to plug into your RF, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so the TV I'm going to be using is a Sony Wega. All right. And on the back, it's hard to see, but right here, this part is your old school RF connection, and you plug this straight in. Now, while I'm plugging this in, I will note that, or screwing in, I should say, I will note that if you have that old ugly thing that says game TV, you know what I'm talking about, it says game, but then it says TV on it and stuff like that. If you have that, you can use that. You'd have to put it, because back in it nowadays, we don't really have the little screws that it connected to connect your signal. So you'd have to get an connector, but better is just getting one of these adapters. Okay, this little adapter right here, I got it off Amazon. I got 2 of them for like $6. You'll get a cleaner picture, and it's just more simplified. Okay, so at this point your Atari is hooked up. Okay guys, so we got the Atari plugged in. Remember to plug your Atari in. I don't think I'll put that in the last step, but so we're gonna use this one. I already got the game. The game goes in, you just put it in like this, pull it out. You load it in here. It only goes one way. You can put it upside down, but it's not going to go. You make sure it's pushed in all the way. Make sure your TV is set to channel 3. Okay, channel 2, channel 3, or channel 4, but generally it's channel 3. All right, and then you just turn it on. Okay, on this we'll go over the switches. This is your power switch. Is what turns it on. So you turn it on, you get your picture. Okay, I'm playing Outlaw. It's one of my favorite games. And if you look at the picture, you can see it's in color, right? And you see how it's changing colors like that? So the ingenuity they had back then was basically, think of it as a modern day screensaver. This was so the colors wouldn't stay the same color and burning your screen as bad or as fast. Okay, so that's why it changes color. This will generally happen at the end of a game or if the game's just sitting by itself. Okay, the next switch we want to look at is your color and black and white. Okay, now this switch, you turn it, and now it's black and white. So we'll go from color, so I can show you what I'm talking about. It goes from color to black and white, right? The reason for this was, back in the day, everybody didn't have a color TV, believe it or not. I mean, there were still black and white TVs in existence, okay? So if you're looking at something red and something brown, if it's a black and white TV, you're not gonna tell the difference. So what they did was, at least on modern games, I mean, I'm not modern, I'm sorry. The first generation of games had this feature for the most part. As games went on, they didn't have that black and white feature. The switch was still there, but you didn't have that feature. So this was a cool innovation they had even back in the 70s, because we had black and white TVs. This next switch is similar to this switch over here, okay? So it says skill left player, skill right player. And all this did was, see how it says expert novice? So if you're playing a 2-player game, then if you have it in the expert setting like it is now, it'll change some features of the game. So if I'm 1 player, and they can be on different. So you can have this, let's say I'm a more skilled player and I'm playing the game. I think with Outlaw, and I could be wrong because it's been like 30 years since I played this game. I think when you shoot, maybe your bullets, I'll just throw an example out there. Let's say I know Space Invaders for sure. You change it on Space Invaders, your ship gets wider. So it's harder for you to dodge when the enemy fires at you. If you put it on novice, your ship goes back to the regular size. And each game, for the most part, at least the first generation games, it would change something. If it's a one-player game, I can tell you if you're playing adventure, then if you play a one-player game with that, you change one of the settings to expert, the dragons will run from the sword. And if you're playing, and then if you flip the other expert switch, then the dragon is going to open and close their mouth faster when they try to eat you. Okay, so that kind of explains that. And this was the same on the 4-switch Atari. The buttons were just up here though. Remember that. Next, we got the game selector switch. And what this does is self-explanatory. It just changes the game. That's all. All right. And just faster you push it, you can hold it down if you want, but it just changes the game variation. All right. And this last switch is the reset switch. And basically what this thing does, in some games you can push the button on your Atari controller and it'll start the game. This one it doesn't, but more modern games it would sometimes. Or generally most of them you just push this and now the game started. So now I'm able to move around, do what I gotta do, shoot, whatever. And that's the thing. In the event you get tired of playing this game, you don't want to play it, just hit reset, starts the game over. Certain games like Adventure that had like some continuity in the game, it wasn't just a one-time experience. If you hit reset, it'll just reset the game, bring the dragons back to life or whatever. You have to be careful though, because if you're trying to reset a game like that and you hit this, it will change. So if I'm playing a game now, right, and I hit this button, it's gonna end the game and take me to the next game selection. So you got to be careful with that. And that's pretty much it. As far as the controls, the system was pretty simple. It had those switches, and that's pretty much it for that portion. Okay, now let's talk about what can you play on your Atari 2600. All right. Well, one game to play for sure was Pac-Man, right? Because back in the 80s, Pac-Man was huge. I mean, you had lunch boxes, you had Pac-Mania, you had records, you had anything you could think of, board games, cereal. Pac-Man was just a big phenomenon at the time. So I remember my buddy called me, right? And he just got the game, okay? It just came out. I didn't get it day one. You know, it wasn't like back in the day, like day one today. He got the game. So he calls me and says, hey man, I got Pac-Man. You want to come over and play it? Yeah, of course. Who doesn't want to play Pac-Man, right? So I go over there, right? I get on my bike, get the back out, the big bike with the banana seat, the flag and all that. So I'm going. I'm out of breath when I get there, but I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna see Pac because the guy lived kind of far away. So I get there, get to his house. He opens the door, come in, greet and everything. And when I see him, I'm talking to him, but I'm looking around his house I'm looking for that. Remember that big ugly table we talked about? Well, I see it. And I say, okay, well that has to be where the Atari is, right? So he opens it up, and sure enough, there it is. And in his case, it was thrown in there. It was not wrapped up the cord like we talked about earlier. So, and obviously, I was right because he didn't go to college. Okay. So anyway, long story short, he plugs it in, hooks it up, turns on the screen, and I'm greeted with this. So I look for a minute and I'm like, okay, well, I see ghosts and stuff. I don't see Pac-Man, but I'm seeing this maze. The maze is ugly, but I'm like, you know what? He didn't start the game yet, so I'm thinking like it probably can get better, So I look at him and I'm like, all right, whatever, dude. So then he turns the game on, hits the reset button, and now I'm greeted with this. So I look, and I look at him. I look at the screen. Look at him again. I look at the screen, and it just goes to my mind. I'm like, what the hell was that? And I look at him like, dude, what are you trying to pull here? That's not Pac-Man. I don't care I don't know you're trying to pull a fast one. I thought we were boys, but that's not Pac-Man. I'm stunned. It just at the ugly, sheer graphics. I mean, Pac-Man, I'm thinking about Pac-Man, right? Pac-Man's a circle, the arcade version. It looks like they said they got the idea from a slice of pizza or whatever, but he's a circle. The thing he shows me, this thing's like it looks like a pair of like channel lock pliers. The thing's sitting in one place. Pac-Man's usually moving around. This guy's in one place, just opening and closing his mouth. And he's got an eyeball. I mean, dude, Pac-Man does not have a freaking eyeball, but this version does. Dude, I was so done. And I think all kids my age at that time, 7 or 8 years old, I feel like it was the biggest bag over the head, punch in the face I ever got. I think I forgave him. I feel like we were still friends after that. But it was I didn't know what I couldn't believe what was even happening at the time. But it was so bad. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. I mean, there were some bangers for the Atari 2600. Real talk, it was some bangers. You had Mr. Do, Asteroids, Space Invaders, Warlords, Dragonfire, Berserk. You had some cool games, but yeah, that was a rough one. That game sucked. In all fairness, the game straight up sucked. Okay, so we're going to take a quick overview of just some of the games I got from my Atari. These are old games. I'm not a collector by no means. These are some of the games that I actually played. These are games I wanted that were fun to me, okay? So we're not going to play all of them, but we're going to just take a look. Now, remember earlier when I was saying the telegames, Atari, and the Atari made by Atari they're the one and the same, right? So look at these two versions of Pac-Man I got. Now, on one of them, they both look ridiculous. They both play like shit, but here they are. I mean, this guy's grabbing wafers. That's ridiculous. But anyway, we're looking at this part, telegames, right? See how it says telegames there? Telegames. Now, on this one, see how it's down here? See how it says Atari? So it's essentially the same shitty game, but just branded different, okay? The telegames was the one you could buy at Sears, that version, and the Atari version was the one that you'd probably get out in the wild somewhere, at your local big box store or, service merchandise back in the day or whatever was open back then. That's where Kmart was a big one. And that's where you'd get that stuff. But essentially, like the Atari consoles, it's one and the same. They're the same thing, just different branding, okay? So these are some of the games, and I have to give a shout out to this guy. So if you had one of these cases, you meant business, okay? Some were a little bigger, but these were like basically little slots where you could pull your games out, and you could slip games in there. So if you had a small collection, you can just put them in and out like that, but that's pretty much it. And if you look through the collection, some of them got telegames on them, okay? But this is Asteroids, okay? If you get the Atari version of Asteroids, it's gonna look a little different. So real quick, I'll show you one game that uses the paddles, in case you're interested in how to use the paddles if you get a set that has it. And we'll try Super Breakout. I know that one runs on paddles. Warlords is down here. That runs on it. And there was a couple of more. I don't know if I have any. But we'll just run that one. We'll run Super Breakout. Pretty simple game. Okay, so here is Super Breakout. We're going to turn it on. Okay. So that's Breakout. Now, right now I got the joystick plugged in. So I'm going to take that. Remember I said that the paddles, they got the two prongs. They go on the first player side. So you take this out. All right. And you plug it in to where the two player side, to one player, I'm sorry. The one player side, you plug it in. Okay. I'm going to break this thing for the night's done. So same thing with the game. You got game variations and whatnot. Okay, they got quite a few. But we'll just start with this one. You start your game, and then you use the paddles. Okay. And you have to be careful because one was for one player and one's for two player. So these things aren't calibrated great. You start the ball, and I suck because these things are so old. These things probably need to be calibrated. The second one, unless you're playing two player, I'm turning it, but it's not going to do anything. And how they operate is, I'm holding my phone, so I can't really hold it with two hands, so it's kind of almost near impossible to play like this. I'll try. You push this button here, ball comes out, and you turn. But I need to focus on it. If I'm playing, I need to play with both hands. But that's pretty much for a paddle game. And you'll know, if you got the books, which nobody has anymore, but if you had the books, it tells you what you need. which controller you need to use with it. But that's pretty much it for the paddles. Make sure you plug it into the 1-player side and you're off and playing, okay? So that's pretty much it with Breakout. The last thing we're going to take a look at is what I like to call frying your system, okay? And it's not like you think, and this is the last thing I was talking about. A lot of people maybe back in the day didn't know about, but it was a thing, okay? So I'm gonna try to do it a couple of times on screen, and I'll explain the process while I'm getting it set up. So basically I'm gonna put my joystick back in, I'll plug that back in. That's what I'm doing now, okay? And we'll do it with one of the games that are pretty simple to identify. So we're gonna do, which one do we want to try? We'll do Air Sea Battle, which this is another one. This game's called, it's Air Sea Battle, okay? That's one of the classics, one of my favorites. But for some reason, Telegames wanted to call the damn thing Target Run, or Target Fun, I should say. Whatever. It's Air Sea Battle at the end of the day. So we got to turn the game on first to show you what it looks like when you start it normally, okay? So we'll put it in, and we'll turn it on. And that's it, okay? That's Air Sea Battle, right? Start it up. And there you go. You're playing the game, right? Now, what we're going to do when we say fry the game, basically what we're doing is glitching the system. And how do we do that? We're basically much glitching the Atari. So when you turn on the older Ataris, and when you would turn them on, so this game has so many variations or whatnot. But when you turn it on, what you would do, you turn it off, you'd have it on like this, and then you just turn it off and on real quick. Okay? Now, it worked on the first try. Now, remember how we turned it on at first? Because if you're playing the HC Battle and you've played it before, you know that the little guns or whatever, the little turrets at the bottom, they don't move all the way across the screen like that. Okay, they're usually stationary, and if they move up to one half of the screen, and they stop. But this guy's just going all over the place. He's just doing his own thing. So once that's done, this is the fried version of the standard version of the game, okay? So you can start it, and it's still gonna be weird like that. So see how I got that plane? So now I'm just turret on this side, right? And this is a stationary selection of the game, but I can still shoot and everything. But this guy's still moving around, right? He's not supposed to be able to do that. So that's a fried version of the game. I'll show you one more. Okay, so real quick, we're gonna show you Outlaw. Okay. So this is Outlaw. This is what it normally looks like. You play it, you know, and the game variations, I think you got like 27 games, something like that. And it goes through all the variations, right? We're just gonna go through real quick. Oh, so I got 16, right? All right, so this is what it normally looks like. So we're gonna go down here like so. We're gonna flip it. And now look how it starts. Okay, now Outlaw was one of my favorites for fried games because, fun fact, when you played it, it would have 100 variations. So remember, we only had 16 when we first cycled through. So I don't know if this one's it or not. We'll try to cycle. Well, we'll start it first and see what it looks like, what it does. Okay, so this isn't the first variation of the game. This is a different variation. And it glitches sometimes. So we'll see how many variations we got. We just got one, because it started back over at 1. Okay, so we'll try it again. Okay, well, you get the gist of it. But basically, you can keep doing it, keep trying it, and get different variations of the game. It's the same game with just different properties. So you can do that with the older games. The later games, they really didn't have that. I guess they programmed them better and made the systems better. But the older games, you could do that and get different variations of the game. So I'm not going to keep doing it because I could be here forever trying. But you could get different versions of the game. So it's just something fun to try out, you know. So that's it with the fried games. So guys, that's going to conclude the Atari 2600. We could take it one step further and know that around 1987, 1988 timeframe, Atari did try to make a comeback with the slogan they had was under 50 bucks. If you put in YouTube and put in Atari under 50 bucks, it'll pop up. It was a sad little jingle. The fun is back. Oh yes sirree. 2600 from Atari. I mean, under 50 bucks. I don't care if it was under 50 cents. No kid at the time wanted to play it anymore because Nintendo had came out and just crushed the Atari. I mean, graphically, the gameplay, the innovations Nintendo had. Unfortunately, the 2600 just couldn't keep up. I mean, it was console going on, almost 10 years. It just couldn't keep up with the Nintendo. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you liked the video, give a like, consider subscribing, ring notification bell, and tell me in your comments, in the comments below, what you thought about the Atari. Did it suck? Did you have a good time with it? Did you even own an Atari? If you're new, did you ever think about getting an Atari? Just let me know what you think at the bottom. And with that, guys, that's going to be the end for me. So, as always, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and protect your inner peace. With that said, go out and play some Atari. Or don't, and just say you did. It's fine. We don't judge here. We know it sucked, but